Back again, and this time we're going to cover what Family Historian calls named lists. If you're a Rootsmagic user, those are named groups. Exactly the same thing. It's a subset of your data, makes it easy to work with, and you can treat it almost like a little to-do list of items you need to polish off. One advantage with Family Historian is I can have a different data layout. If you've watched the last video on setting up the records window, I can have a different named list layout depending on the data that I want to display. I'm going to demonstrate the beginnings of a little DNA tracking sort of list that I've developed. It's nothing special. I've seen much more complicated and comprehensive methods. But I like to keep things simple, so when I see a match being flagged up on my heritage or ancestry, I add certain data into my project, and that's in the named list, and I can track them down. It's like the fragments of the jigsaw that I've mentioned before, and I want to build that out, and eventually it's going to become part of the main puzzle and part of my tree. Don't forget to subscribe down below and hit the bell if you want to get notifications of future videos. Let's get started. This video concentrates on named lists. If you're a Rootsmagic user, then Rootsmagic refers to them as named groups. Exactly the same thing, but more powerful in Family Historian. This is what the Family Historian help file says about named lists. Click pause on the video and have a wee read through it. You'll see various types of record mentioned and also media, which I'm going to cover later. Firstly, click on the little stack of cylinders on the left hand side and that'll get you into the records window. If you don't have a pane down the right hand side, then click on the list button on the toolbar. This is only visible when you're on the records window. By default, Family Historian applies 3 named lists. You get bookmarks, key individuals and work in progress. And you can see at the moment the item counts in all of these are 0. If I want to add Thomas Record to the bookmarks list, I highlight the list and simply drag Thomas to the list pane below. If I want to add Alice Harrison to a list, I highlight her, and a different way of doing it is to go to the Edit menu, choose Add to Named Lists, and in this case, on the drop down, I'm going to select the Key Individuals list, and OK. Now we have 1 record in the bookmarks list and 1 record in the Key Individuals. Just for example, I'm going to sort this by name, and here we have 3 Carringtons, Alan, Charlotte and Hugh. I'm going to highlight all 3 and drag them to the work in progress list. I want to remove Charlotte again. I simply highlight her and press the delete key on the keyboard. I get a warning and I confirm. That has only removed Charlotte from the named list, not from the project file. Adding and removing from lists is as simple as that. Why would you want lists? Well, when I go shopping, I make a small list of the items I need to replenish. I don't make a list of everything in my kitchen cupboards. In genealogy terms, I might have a list for individuals I'm not 100% sure on and need to revisit. I might have a list of family members who had a connection with a certain geography or place. I might have a list of people I want to chase up on with missing census entries, etc., etc. Recently I've been using named lists to follow up on DNA matches. Anyone who has tested and uploaded their data will get alerts from sites like Ancestry and MyHeritage, and I like to track strong matches down and connect them to my tree wherever possible. Later in this video you'll see me create a list for missing grave marker photographs, which is another passion of mine. If I right click on the named list pane, I can easily create a new list, delete a list, empty a list. Empty a list does exactly what it says. I can delete listed records, which I'm going to do next. Configure columns, keep current list order, and change the properties. I'll return to those last 3 later. I'll just quickly create a list and name it problem. I always keep such a list for individuals I'm struggling with. Now I'm going to create a new list called Unknown People, just to demonstrate an option. Remember, this is the Family Historian sample file which comes with the program. Play around with this file first to build your confidence and familiarity. I'm going to multi-select all these individuals where the relationship to root is blank. In other words, they are not connected to the main tree in this sample project. I'm going to drag these highlighted records to the unknown people list I just created. Now I right click on the unknown people list and select delete listed records. You'll get a warning dialog and be required to check a box to confirm. Delete listed records does exactly that. Those records will be deleted from your project, not just deleted from the list. That can be a very useful feature, and I'm going to show another useful application of that option now. You'll remember the Family Historian help file mentioned media. Unlike Rootsmagic, Family Historian named lists are not restricted just to individual records. I've switched projects to another old Rootsmagic file which I know has a lot of broken media links. I click Media, View All Media, and as you can see here, there are a lot of broken links in this file. I select Find and Broken Links, and now I have a list of all of my broken links. I can't do a Control A here, and I'm guessing the developers have a very good reason for not facilitating that. However, I can highlight the top record, scroll right to the very last record, hold down the Shift key on my keyboard and select the last record. That highlights every record in between. I go to Edit, Add to Named List. Oh, but there is no named list for this in the drop-down, and there's no option to create a new one. It's not terribly intuitive, but all you need to do is type the name of the list you want to create. I'm just going to choose Broken Links. When I click OK, Family Historian alerts me there's no such list and asks do I want to create one. I click OK, and that's it done. Operation completed. Going back to my records window, here is my broken links list with 3,776 records. I want to remove these broken links from my file, and this is going to take a while with so many records, so I'll cut to the end. I right click on the broken links list, select delete listed records. I get a warning just as before, and I confirm. Off it goes. That took almost 2 minutes, and I have a very fast computer. If you're dealing with a large set of records that you want to delete, put the kettle on and leave Family Historian alone to do its thing. You can see the broken links count is now gone to 0. Don't panic. None of your precious media files have been deleted. Only the links to those media files within the program have been deleted, and if you switch back to the media window, there are no broken links now. Very useful. I close the media view and go back to the records window, and I'll delete that broken links list as I'm finished with it now. Filtering and isolating broken media links in Rootsmagic has always been a problem, as you can see from these Rootsmagic user Facebook posts. It's perfectly natural that a user would want to work through their broken links and resolve them. The only way in Rootsmagic is to visually scan through the complete media collection, spotting each one. There's no filter, there's no sorting mechanism in the latest version of Rootsmagic to make that process any easier. Another often wished for media related item for Rootsmagic users is the ability to report where a media item exists. This happens most often around Memorial Day when users want to get a list of burial sites missing a photograph. I'll be covering that later in Family Historian once I complete these list options. That leaves me with 3 options to explain: configure columns, keep current list order, and list properties. I've switched project again to something quite close to the project I use today. Let me explain some of these lists. DNA Jackson. These are links that I've lifted from my heritage and ancestry. I want to follow up on these links and link them to my tree. DNA Patricia. It's the same, but links for my wife. If I look at this Frida Patterson and click on Diagrams tab, I have quite a bit of detail copied out from my heritage in this case, but no proven link to my wife's tree. Eggleton USA Census Chase. This is my most direct cousins, as the majority of my Eggleton family emigrated to Wayne County around 1871. Norfolk Census Chase. Not terribly well built out in this project, but these are some of the pre-1871 Eggleton families of interest in Norfolk. Obituary Find is a list where I want to chase up on possible obituaries next time I visit the newspaper library, those that are not available online. Surgeon or Census Chase is a small list of surgery names in and around Doak and Ballynear parishes. It's a relatively small geography, but one which mostly contains my direct surgeon or ancestors. Before I move on, let me point out this little inconspicuous pane bottom right which has no label. I have any valid surgeon or highlighted here, and let me paste in a note which is rather large. I'm not sure as regards character limitations at the moment, but this certainly appears okay. What I do believe is that this note only exists within the context of the list itself, and it's not on the individual record for any. I could be wrong. You'll notice the last lines say I will copy it to a research log within Family Historian. Well, really, that would be the correct thing to do in order to document those research efforts into the future. Once I delete Annie from this named list, that note data seems to disappear with her and her list entry. Here's where the real magic of named lists happens. Every one of these lists can be configured to suit the data which is in the list. That was something I wished for shortly after the release of Rootsmagic 4 back in 2009, 15 years ago. Perhaps Calico Pie were reading the room back then. I usually position the vertical divider about here so I can still have access to the records window on the left. Your screen size and preference will differ. Let me look at DNA Jackson. Here's how I have this screen configured. I have the name, I have the record number, I have the details of the match. I have the date here where I tried to initiate some chat with the individual. In Rootsmagic, I entered these notes of correspondence and fact notes, like this one here for Adrian Lambert, incidentally one of many where I received no reply. In Family Historian, I can add these to the correspondence logs, which are part of the research logs. If I open that tab, you'll see I just entered this one as an example. If I open Adrian's property box and then click on Notes, you'll see the fact note which came in from Rootsmagic, and below the example I added as a linked research note. I'm hoping to do more on research logs and the possibilities in Family Historian somewhere down the road. I've seen a lot of inspiring user methods, so I want to do them justice. I didn't explain this little column with the P header. Think of this as a family count. When it shows something greater than 0, I know I have more than a single individual. Here's the function, and all these functions are in the help file. There's also other count functions you will find in the help file. You'll have seen the child count one being used in the last video. One count that doesn't exist at present is something like tree count, where it would display the number of individuals in any of these trees. Personally, I would find that very informative with these list entries, and also something I could sort on, maybe in version 8. You can see this field is called DNA Chat, and the description field in that attribute just shows I have attempted to contact the match. Anyone who tries to do similar DNA chasing will know it always doesn't have a great success rate. I can sort these dates here chronologically or sort on any other column. Let me look at Margaret Maxwell. I'm going to double click to open her property box. This is my initial contact, and you will see I got some good information back regarding how she is linked. I'm going to sort on the family count and select Wilbert Styles. I click on the both diagrams icon on the toolbar, and I can actually see Wilbert Styles is already connected to my family tree, right down to Jessica Ellis. I can delete him from this list as I'm no longer chasing his DNA match. I do the same for Mary Jane Surgeoner, and again she is already connected to my tree, so another one I can delete from my chase list. You get the idea. Let me look at some of the ones with 0 here. Adrian Lambert, 210 centimorgans, which is quite high, but sadly I've not learned how Adrian fits into my tree yet. I reached out to that match back in 2021 via Ancestry messaging, but I've heard nothing back. My opinion is those very scant trees online are DNA testers who are more interested in ethnicity or possibly parentage rather than building an online tree. So Adrian stays on the chase list, and I need to check for him again on other sites. I do the same for Marlene Kelland, and it's the same result. And again, I messaged Marlene or the tree manager back in 2021. Such are the frustrations of DNA matching. DNA Patricia. These are just some of the DNA matches I'm chasing for my wife's line. Eggleton, USA Census chase. I believe I showed this layout in the Records window video. Basically, the list is set up via a query based on geography. I want to complete the census returns for all of my USA cousins. On this layout, if a census year appears, then I have the census fact entered. If the census year is missing, then the age that person would have been on that particular census is displayed. Norfolk Census chase. Same idea based on geography, but based on the 0-1 years for the UK census returns. This was to fill out my Eggleton ancestors and family before they left Norfolk in 1871. I say was, as this file is my last Rootsmagic import, and most of this work is completed now. That's an important point actually. Nothing here except for that list note I added to Annie has been changed in this file. This is a direct import of a Rootsmagic file including Rootsmagic groups, media links, witness events and source templates. All these display possibilities are only due to how Family Historian processes and presents data. Obituary finds. A simple one where back in Rootsmagic I had a custom obituary attribute. When I discovered an obituary, I dated it, transcribed the obituary into the notes field, and put the publication name into the description field for that attribute. Those which I wanted to track down in the future, I simply put find into the description field. That name group was created by a query back in Rootsmagic. I'm going to create a list in Family Historian which I simply couldn't create in Rootsmagic as the query selections are far from complete, so stay tuned. Surgeon or census chase. In Ireland, there are essentially no census returns prior to 1901. I have a complete 1901 census list for all the family members I'm interested in and concentrate on. You'll see the same is not true for the 1911 census work, so there's work there for me to complete. You'll also see columns for 1881 and 1891 here, as families frequently move back and forth between Ireland and Scotland for work and family reasons. This is another geographic list around the Ballyclare area which essentially confines my family of that time frame. I'll sort this on birth order to make it easier to spot by age those who may have made it to the 1901 census. That brings me to the next option on lists. Keep current list order. Does exactly what it says on the tin. Let me go to a 50-50 display split here in order to explain the last list option. I can expand the details for Agnes by clicking the plus alongside her record or by pressing the right arrow key on my keyboard, and the same within her details. Look at this one, recorded age 999 years. Now that's a deliberate plant just for this demo. I click on the plus, then select the data and change it to 75 years. This is called low-level editing in Family Historian. Let me explain this data entry. Here's the death registration for Agnes. Her age was noted as 75 years. Back in Rootsmagic, I used a custom attribute called recorded age to enter these details. The reason was I wanted to compare that age with the age calculated by Rootsmagic, just to make sure there was no big difference and possibly an error in my data entry. Age is a standard GEDCOM tag, but Rootsmagic never made any use of it. In Family Historian, I can enter age as it might appear on a death or a marriage registration, so I don't need that old Rootsmagic custom attribute anymore. The ages here in parentheses are all calculated by Family Historian from the data that's already been entered. On the death event for Agnes, I enter 75 in the age field and look what happens. It shows without parentheses, so I know that data is record based. In Family Historian, I can delete this custom fact now as it's no longer needed and it's just more bloat. Here's a USA death registration. You'll note that it's not unusual for the age of death to be noted in years, months and days. Going back to Agnes, I open the age helper by clicking on the three little dots to the right of the field and enter 48027, and Family Historian records that. To better explain the last list option, let me do a bit of low-level editing on this list panel. But wait, David's facts are all greyed out. I click the plus here, and there's nothing that I can edit. The last option in the list menu is List Properties, and in Properties you'll see a little checkbox for Record Editing Enabled. I click that followed by OK, and the greyed out facts suddenly become available to edit. Personally, I like to see things in context in the property box. However, if I do spot a glaring typo, I'm happy to make those edits in the record window. I just wanted to point that option out in case it suits your workflow, but do be careful. I've mentioned geographic-based lists, DNA links, and some other lists. These lists were created as groups back in Rootsmagic 7. That's where I got off the Rootsmagic bus. Really only something like a problem list should be static, where you manually add and delete people from it. Most lists are created through the use of a query. I produced a video on basic query building some time back, and you'll find that if you scroll down through my video listings or the Family Historian user group knowledge base. This next query simply cannot be created in Rootsmagic, and if I remember correctly, it was explained back in the previous video. The question usually pops up around Memorial Day, when Rootsmagic users have that extra drive to collect some missing burial photographs. The problem which still persists in Rootsmagic is that you cannot search on media existing or not existing. Who knows, maybe after watching this video, the Rootsmagic developers will finally close that gap. However, you can search on just about anything in Family Historian. This is my query. I run it and enter a part of a cemetery name. I'm going to choose city and OK. Here's my list of plot numbers I'm currently aware of and those which are missing grave marker photographs. I click on the cogwheel top right, select Add Row Records to named list, type a name for the list, and that's it. Here is the list and the records. I just need to customize the columns. I covered this in the last video, but just as a recap, I right click on the list header, configure columns, select Load from Query, select my Burial Photos Missing query, and there we are. I can take a screen snippet of that and save it to my Dropbox folder, and then I have a ready-made list on my phone in my pocket next time I visit that cemetery. I've run the query again for Dundonald and excluded the media missing condition, as I just want to show you something before I finish up. Here at the top I have George. I highlight him and select Narrative Report. Here's the report, and the grave marker photograph prints in line within the report. I've just checked the latest version of Rootsmagic 10, and this is the report I get with absolutely no media. George died as an infant. There is no individual media for him. The only media item referring to him is the mention on this grave marker. Rootsmagic will only print image files which are attached at the personal level. I believe it's wrong to attach media where it doesn't belong, and Rootsmagic users should not be forced to skew their data entry just to cover a program shortcoming. It took me a long time to reverse a lot of those bad habits like age and media linking once I gave up Rootsmagic as my main genealogy program. You couldn't help not to have noticed the number of holes, gaps and areas of improvement which became obvious during this little walkthrough of lists and my last Rootsmagic data. I always try to squeeze in some little tidbits along the way, like the age entering and the data helper for age. I hope you found those useful. If you did find them useful, then give the video a thumbs up and it will be very much appreciated, helps the channel and gives me encouragement for more videos. Also, don't forget to leave your comments down below. Again, I hope you found that useful. Being able to keep that extensive data in named lists in Family Historian has proved very useful for me. The flags are another thing, something I maybe cover in a video of its own. It's not a very big subject, but it is a feature that is in Family Historian and it's not in Rootsmagic. Don't forget to subscribe down below and hit the bell if you want to get notifications of future videos. And as always, go check out these videos to the left. I'm also going to do a short video, or I intend to do a short video, on maybe 3 of my favourite plugins. There's over 100 plugins available from the Family Historian plugin store. I'm only going to maybe cover 3, and again, when I was migrating from Rootsmagic, especially the one that flagged up duplicate facts, I found that extremely useful. So I look forward to seeing you in the next video. Take it easy.